Let's be honest, fellas, it was only a matter of time before the big dog tackled this issue with his razor-sharp wit and well-established business acumen, making genius business moves like I'm a young Wall Street trader making smoking hot trades without any of the money or tax evasion, allegedly. It's only been 10 seconds since this video started and I'm already confused. Jake Paul, multi-millionaire with billionaire set in his sights. We all know him, we all know who he is. I'm not going to dedicate time to detailing his rise to fame, but I will have a lot of time for Team 10 catch-up, because I doubt any of you have actually kind of like recently thought of them. If Team 10 hasn't crossed your mind recently, it's most likely because they haven't really existed in the news as of late, or really existed at all. Because, I mean, Team 10 was always monetary focused. It was a collective with monetary prospects trying to capitalize off that. It was not a group of friends with a good group dynamic, and many people, including myself, believed that this would cause splinters in the group or eventually create dry content, but not like this quickly. Team 10 now has more former members than current ones. As far as I can tell, it has I can't assign 16 on one hand. It has 16 former members, and a lot of them did not leave on very good terms with the corporation, which is not a good sign. And the ones that I didn't count, I don't actually know if they are still with Team 10, because they don't really seem to actually exist as people. Team 10, the channel, hasn't posted in 8 months, and no one that's currently like a part of Team 10 does anything, does enough stuff for me to validate that. Team 1000, more like Team 7. Speaking of Team 1000, let's talk about that. This was Jake's first public business outing, aside from just content creation for Team 10 and what that included. It was a paid subscription thing that employed pretty scummy tactics to get people to pay more, and overall wasn't really worth the cost and eventually dwindled and therefore just disappeared off the face of the earth. And you can learn more about it from this video by Drew Gooden. Just go watch it, good video. Then in a strange overlap period, Demeanor was created, which was kind of like a networking storefront kind of thing for creators that gained no traction whatsoever in any capacity and pretty much immediately became defunct, which Drew also talked about. Wow, it's like he's a good creator or something. Go watch his stuff. So first we had Edfluence and Team 1000, which were scummy ways to get money off children, and then eventually became less profitable and veered off into becoming what appeared to be an exit scam. And then we got Demeanor, which was pretty much just an exit scam from its inception, right down to the flashy web design with broken links, including 2 links right next to each other that link to the exact same web page. It has the same hyperlink. There's no difference between them. And then we got this new, totally not an exit scam, that just sucks. It's bad. I should mention, as of the time of this recording, the actual financial freedom movement is free, or at the very least, the site is super buggy because I didn't have to pay for it. I'm pretty sure it's been made free because of the persistently harsh backlash faced from every single person alive. Now, even though it is free, I would argue that is still way too much to charge for this. These sessions are unbearable, even for me, somebody who actually enjoys scrounging through metadata and watching press interviews for small little hints of information. I read a disgusting amount of documentation on Pascal just to justify my hatred for it, for a single offhanded comment in a video that was 2 hours long. But this, Jake Paul and some dude who, if I met in real life, I would probably think is kind of a dick, linguistically slobbering all over each other. That's the line. This is too much for me. Not every video in the package includes Jake. In fact, most of them don't. But whenever he does appear, this feeling of hot shame washes over me, most likely originating from the pure embarrassment I feel from being the same species as him, let alone holding the same general occupation. He just shows up and starts dribbling all over the scenery. Honestly, it's a fucking disgrace. Everything that he says in this and the stuff that he's done in the past Nerd City video, go watch that, good context, makes me believe that he understands extremely well how to capitalize off his current situation. Like, morals be damned. He knows how to do that very well. But he doesn't entirely understand how he got there. He never brings up, or at the very least doesn't bring it up enough, that a solid, undeniable portion of his success is luck. He got successful on Vine partially because of luck, and he transferred that success to YouTube, again, partially because of luck. I'm not denying he doesn't work, or he doesn't work very, very hard. I work extremely fucking hard, but at the same time, I also get extremely lucky. I think I get luckier than I actually work, which is... I'm not complaining. This bleeds into my biggest personal issue with all of this gross stuff, being the overtly apparent anti-education rhetoric. And I read somewhere that he doesn't want to be labeled as anti-anything, let alone anti-education, which is a fine opinion to have, which is a real shame and is completely undercut by the fact that he is anti-education. That's just what he is, like, at least contextually. You can say you don't want to be that, but you also insult education. Like, it's also worth noting the insane amount of hypocrisy that comes from denouncing education and the thought of a curriculum and whatever extent he feels that, then also going on to make your own curriculum. And he also said he doesn't want it to be labeled as a curriculum because that feels too rigid, and also probably would have made the hypocrisy very apparent because this whole thing, that's basically a curriculum. Like, in a very loose definition of it, that's a curriculum. You've done the impossible, Jake. Everywhere throughout the videos in these courses are slight jabs and sometimes extremely flow-baking, massive apparent jabs at the education system and about how it doesn't teach us about taxes and insurance and therefore should be abolished and teachers should be burned. He's been on this train for a while. Like, it's one of like the defining features of Jake Paul outside of his YouTube channel, that and like tweeting about cyberbullying. Like, he talks about education a surprising amount. He tweets about it a lot, sometimes with pictures that have shortened words in them, despite the fact it's a picture and therefore has no character limits, so you don't even need to shorten the words. And despite his entire career being speaking mostly too much, he doesn't seem to do it that well. I don't want to come off as demeaning or belittling, but maybe if you're going to like insult the schooling system, you should at the very least try and spell things correctly and say them right. For example, Make Money Today, Becoming an Instant Money Machine, Part 1 or 2, I don't remember the name, where Jake Paul and some dude I can't be bothered to learn the name of talk about how stupid education is and how much it doesn't matter specifically for editing for about 2 minutes straight, which I will disagree with in a short second. Don't you fret, young child. The entire point can be summarized by basically saying work in the environment that you actually want to succeed in, which is very good advice, but isn't exactly a complete substitute for trying to learn stuff. And I don't know who this is. I can't be bothered to learn his name, but at the very least, whenever the ball in the conversation comes to him, he does reiterate the point and then add something new using his words. Jake, on the other hand, stumbles through his sentences like he's telepathically linked to Joe Biden. This simplistic worldview, paired with his less than simplistic words, isn't exactly the pinnacle of persuasion. Oh, I dropped out of high school and moved to LA to pursue my dreams and I turned out fine. But did you? I promised before that I would disagree with Jake Paul and Jack stalling the conversation so Jake can compute his next line. So here it is. No, working in the field does not completely substitute for any sort of education. It's a lot more complicated than that. Tertiary education does have worth. Go fuck yourself. That wasn't necessary, but still. It's decently more complicated than just saying no outright. So take me for example. I'm learning about editing, like through a course at university, which is tertiary education. That's what I'm doing. And before that, I I was okay at editing. Like, I understood it. I knew how to use the program, but I didn't entirely understand the theory behind it or like really think about what I was doing. I just did it. Since I started this course, I am better at it. Just objectively, like I'm just better. They say that like they don't look at qualifications and instead look at the quality of the work, but wouldn't the quality of the work be representative of the experience and like the knowledge that they have previously, which you would get from tertiary education? And also, just as like Jake and whoever the fuck that guy is wouldn't look at an education as one of their factors, sometimes other people would. Just because Jake personally doesn't value a degree doesn't devalue them as a whole. That's not how... You're not God, dude. You can't do that. For the sake of transparency, it is worth noting that I actually do agree with him in some weird sense that I don't think he would actually understand, being that for many types of work, you don't need a degree for it. You can actually just get experience in the field and do all of that in, things that aren't like engineering and medicine. But usually that success, that drive comes from passion, and they do actually learn outside of university, and they do try and better themselves, and I don't think that applies to YouTubers creating subpar content for children. This whole ideology is pretty apparent in his most recent upload on Jake Paul Biz. It's also the only recent upload on Jake Paul Biz, which includes Jake Paul, surprise, and two random people that just happen to also enjoy agreeing with Jake Paul. Towards the end of the video and subsequently my life, the man on the far left recounts his experience of going to university or some course or whatever, where he didn't even do anything. He never edited anything. He never even opened the program. He just watched some movies from, like, the 40s. I don't want to be too harsh here because, to be fair, I don't know this guy, but to be even fairer, he's kind of an idiot for the sake of just being Jake Paul's yes man. Because editing isn't just a physical thing you do, and I don't think he knows that, because it's not like opening Premiere and moving the things around. That's editing. Editing is actually like a theory, like it's a concept of a thing, that you would be taught in a class in which you would watch old movies that represent the core foundational building blocks of that theory. Hypothetically, of course. On a much less hypothetical note, I'd like to introduce to you one of the most important films ever made. It's basically a minute long. It was made in the 1910s or the 1920s in Soviet Russia or whatever. And it's called the Kuleshov effect, which demonstrates the Kuleshov effect. Surprise. Basically, in a very, simplistic term, it's not exactly how it works, but basically, it just shows that us as the audience project meaning and emotion onto characters and scenes based of what they're specifically next to in context, rather than them as a singular thing. Alfred Hitchcock described its importance at many interviews, and even recreated it just to prove that point. We have Alfred Hitchcock, and he smiles. If it's after some kids playing, he's a sweet old man. If it's some lewd women on the beach or something, he's a creepy old man. And, the actual reaction hasn't changed. It's just what was before it, what he's reacting to. That's basically what it is, and it is the singular most important thing in the entirety of editing. It's what everything else is based on. So yeah, maybe old films from the 40s are actually kind of important to what we do currently in the modern day, but nobody really wants to point that out, because if they do, it makes their financial freedom course seem a whole lot less enticing when you realize that you can learn better stuff without Jake Paul involved. And without Jake Paul involved makes everything significantly better. The strange thing is, much like myself, the people arguing the value of modern day editing theory in today's society and working conditions and how to rise in job structures and all that is being argued by fucking YouTube. Dumb millennial YouTubers. It's pretty easy to argue you don't need an education on a certain subject when you can just get by and be successful by being objectively shit at that thing. Nobody's sitting around modern day King Arthur's round table arguing the value of education for video editing actually makes videos good enough to prove their point. I'm not even sure Jake edits his videos anymore, And even a lot of his older ones that he did edit
go check it out now. The link is
aren't done very well. He now paves over a lot of like the faults in his videos by just high octane action, quick cuts to hide things, and expensive camera equipment. Just kidding. The production quality on his videos suck dick. This is embarrassing. Everything's overexposed, they're not focused. The camera's autofocus should do better than this. You're using a DSLR, not a cinema lens that has autofocus. What the fuck's going on here? Also, the audio on all the videos from his financial freedom course are super echoey despite being recorded by him, and the fact that he has more money than I could possibly imagine to physically exist in one place, and yet he can't spare $40 to buy some fucking foam, throw it on a room, or just not record in the most open space of your house. You rich flexing dickhead. Mr. Wine Hairman that shared his anecdote before doesn't exactly fare any better. Like, why is this opacity mask in an egg shape? Just choose a circle or a square. Squares fit into squares, and circles are more human-esque. Ovals are nothing. But yeah, these are the people that should be arguing what type of education is worth it. Basically, the whole point is that, like, being a YouTuber is a very specific type of job. It's a very unique field, being that you can objectively suck at everything that makes up what you are and still be successful. But being successful at a thing doesn't mean that you're automatically knowledgeable about it, which is why Jake looks like such a fucking moron all the time. He has gotten successful because at some point in his career he got lucky, just as I did, just as many other people have, but he doesn't grasp that, and he thinks because he has such little, dangerously little education, but he is successful, that means education sucks dick. And at the risk of pointing out the obvious, it doesn't. That's pretty much the whole thing. That's the whole thing, guys. Thanks to the fellas for supporting me. Buy some merch if you want, if you like it, if you want to get down and support me. I think I'm having a fucking heat stroke. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Did I write anything else? Oh yeah, buy my merch if you want to support me, or get bullied by the other kids on the playground. I like that joke. That one's self-referential. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. All right, goodbye.